piled up in a heap a great distance away at a town called Adam in the vicinity of Zarethan, while the water flowing down to the sea of the Araba, that is the Salt Sea, was completely cut off, so the people crossed over opposite Jordan. Now, we have a map on the right, this time north at the top, so we can kind of follow what the Scripture is telling us here. The Israelites were crossing right here, and the place Adam is way up to the north here. And the Bible tells us that that is where the waters of the Jordan River piled up in a heap. In other words, the river was dammed up to the north there at Adam. So we have a very detailed description of what took place when the Israelites crossed the Jordan River. Kind of the Jordan Valley, as you probably know, is a part of what's called the Great Rift. It's a kind of a sunken area on the face of the earth. It starts up in northern Syria, comes down through the land of Palestine, continues south across the Red Sea, all the way down into Africa. And all those monkey bones they're finding there in the Rift Valley in Africa, it's the same system that starts up in Syria, and the Sea of Galilee, Jordan Valley, the Dead Sea are all part of that same Rift Valley system. It's a very unstable area, and earthquakes in this area are fairly common. On average, in Israel, they get one powerful earthquake a century, and then there's some minor ones, but you can pretty much count on one really, really big one every century. Now, fortunately, we've had it. We haven't yet had it for the 21st century. We had it for the 20th century in 1927, I think is the year, when they really got a terrific earthquake. And when an earthquake hits in the Jordan Valley in the right way, the banks of the river in the area of Adam are dislodged, and they actually dam up the river. Now, on the left you see the Jordan River in the area of Adam. It's kind of a twisting course there. But notice how close it comes to these high banks right here. And on the right is a closer view of those high banks in the vicinity of Adam. And we have a number of recorded instances throughout history where earthquakes have dislodged these banks here, and they've slid down into the Jordan River and actually blocked it up and dammed it up for a period of time. The earthquake that I mentioned that happened last century, around 1927, did that very thing at that time, and the Jordan River was blocked up for 20 hours. The water did not flow from Adam down to the Dead Sea for about 20 hours, well documented within modern times. And as I say, we have a number of other instances recorded throughout history. So I would suggest that God used an earthquake to accomplish His purposes at this particular time. And of course, He was in control of that. It happened in just the right way to block up the river at exactly the right time and for the right length of time for the Israelites to get across. On the left we see the ruin of Jericho right here. Not terribly interesting to look at it from a distance, but when you excavate, then there's all kinds of stuff there at that city. It's called the oldest city in the world because there's evidence for settlement and occupation there going way back into the Neolithic times. In fact, Kenyon claimed that the earliest city there was about 8,000 B.C. Now, I would put a big question mark after that date because that is based on carbon-14 dating. There's no other way to date those early remains. They didn't even make pottery that early. So that's anybody's guess as to what the real date is, but based on the carbon-14, that's the date you'll read in a lot of textbooks. The reason why it was settled so early is because of the very good source of water that's there, and we'll look at that in a moment. It's on the other side. You can't see it in this picture. We are looking east across the Jordan Valley, and the direction the Israelites were coming from. Notice the palm trees here. In fact, that's another name for Jericho in the Old Testament, the city of palms. And one story in particular that uses that name is in Judges chapter 3, the story of Eglon, king of Moab. He came to Jericho, built a palace there, collected tribute from the Israelites, and then, you remember, God raised up Ehud, and he assassinated Eglon in his palace right here at Jericho, and in fact, that building has been found. That's another talk. We won't get into that, because that's another time period. That's the time period of the Judges. Jericho is an oasis. You see the green here. That's all the result of this good source of water right here on the other side of the mound of Jericho. When you get to the edge of the irrigated area, it's desert. Out here in this Jordan Valley, it's all desert. If you can irrigate that land, it is very productive. And there is a lot of irrigation on both sides of the river, done by Israel, done by Jordan. They're taking the water from the Jordan River, using it to irrigate those areas in the valley. And as a result, there's not much water flowing into the Dead Sea, and the level of the Dead Sea has been dropping over the past several decades. And we'll get into that a little bit more in our second talk when we talk about Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, on the right is a reconstruction of what Jericho looked like as the Israelites approached the city. This time we're looking toward the west. This was done by John Garstang, who excavated Jericho in the 1930s. And at the time of his excavation, he didn't quite have the fortification system figured out. Kathleen Kenyon, when she came along in the 50s, was able to properly interpret the fortification system. But Garstang had it almost right, but not quite. He shows an upper city wall here, and then down at the base of the tell, he shows a wall here in ruins. Now, he thought this earlier wall was not in use at the time of the Israelite conquest, and he thought there was only an upper city wall. Well, it turns out, based on Kenyon's work, that there was also a lower wall here. And so there was a lower wall, an earthen embankment, and then an upper city wall protecting Jericho.